examining wrestling stories and matches through the eyes of game plans, adjustments, intangibles, and analytics. This is the series. Previously on the series, CM Punk's AEW World title reign never got off the ground as a foot injury cost him the summer, and Jon Moxley gave him no time to recover in his first match back. Maybe CM Punk came back too early from his foot injury. Maybe he lacked the confidence and the focus. Maybe he was never going to beat Jon Moxley on August 24th. Whatever your reasoning might be, the fact is, CM Punk lost the AEW World title in emphatic fashion and immediately became the most disappointing AEW World Champion in company history. The true mark of a champion is not getting to the top or even staying on the top. It's how you respond after you get knocked out. Punk was knocked down, counted out, and even doubting if he would be able to return. A week after his loss to Jon Moxley, Punk seemed on the verge of calling it a career. The self-doubt was evident as he spoke. He questioned his foot, his fortitude, and his fire. He looked like a broken man who had something left to prove, but no capacity to prove it. A far cry from where he was a year ago when he returned to wrestling. It took Ace Steel, Punk's longtime friend and trainer, to remind him who he was. Steel tugged at Punk's heartstrings by invoking Chicago, in Chicago, knowing that Punk may have lost confidence in himself, but he would never lose confidence in his hometown, and his hometown would never lose confidence in him. Fueled by Chicago, the look was back in the eyes of CM Punk. Questions still remain for the former champion. Punk had the Windy City advantage at AEW All Out, but was his foot healthy? He admitted he came back too early, and even though his foot was a new 100%, he wasn't sure if that would be good enough. Would the focus be there? Chicago might be Punk country, but Moxley is beloved everywhere he goes, and one cheer for Moxley or jeer for Punk could rattle him. More importantly, much like the first match, even if Punk was fully focused and healthy, was he good enough to beat Jon Moxley? While Punk had his doubts, Moxley was supremely confident. He was willing to face any competitor willing to step up. It happened to be Punk, but Moxley would have fought the devil himself if he grabbed the open contract and signed it. Moxley didn't have to call himself the best in the world to sell t-shirts. He proved it every time he walked to the ring. The look on Punk's face as he enters the ring shows a calmer man than we saw in Cleveland. He was smiling in Cleveland, but his body language and vibe told a different story than his face. In Chicago, he looks more at peace. It's been a theme of Punk's run that he's been able to feed off the crowd. Chicago brings him security against multiple unknowns. Moxley, as always, is a picture of confidence. A middle finger to the camera before he walks through the hostile road crowd. Jon Moxley does not give a fuck and will not be rattled. Punk gives a polite applause as Moxley is introduced. It appears to be more respect than sarcasm. Whether it was their first match or Moxley's overall attitude, he has earned the respect of Punk, though it likely doesn't matter to the champion. Punk starts the match by putting his left foot forward to bait Moxley into making the first move. Moxley doesn't bite and instead sits on the mat and flips off Punk. The mind games are beginning early between these two. We saw a cautious start in their first match, and Punk has even more reason to be cautious given how that bout went. Punk is almost immediately thrown off by the dueling CM Punk, "Let's go Moxley" chant, and Moxley is making sure to point it out. Punk just walks straight forward and pushes Moxley back, leading to a struggle in the corner. Moxley appears a bit caught off guard by Punk's opening move, but he's dismissive and unbothered at the same time. The ref asks for a clean break, but Punk holds the tie clinch and lands a series of knees. In the first match, the ref backed Punk off of the corner, and Moxley took advantage with a headbutt. In this bout, Punk smartly controls Moxley's head and continues to inflict damage. Punk lands a series of chops in the corner, but Moxley returns fire with forearms. Moxley gives Punk space, and Punk lands a head kick coming out of the corner. He throws with his left foot, putting his weight on his right foot, the opposite of how he injured himself in the first match. It's a risky move either way, but Punk is banking on his foot holding up through contact rather than technique. The kick wobbles Moxley, and Punk shows no sign of damage. Punk connects with a series of knee strikes in the corner and a short arm clothesline. Punk usually follows up the corner knee with the running bulldog, but we're seeing him diversify his attack to keep Moxley off guard, which is part of the scouting report on how to get the better of Moxley. Punk lands a series of elbow strikes, picks Moxley up, and hits the GTS for a 2 count. Though Moxley kicked out, he's clearly rattled early. Punk threw the head kick and survived. Then he mixed up his offense and hit the quick strike GTS. It's all thrown Jon Moxley off. He's surviving, but he's in danger. Punk did do a short signal for the GTS, but he made sure to get Moxley off the ground first rather than drawing out the taunt, which has backfired in the past. Moxley wisely rolls out of the ring to try and recover. Punk, rather than following up after the kickout, allows him to do so. Punk does cut him off with a tope suicida that knocks Moxley into the crowd. The risk pays off, but failing to immediately follow up after Moxley kicked out could prove costly. They battle through the crowd and Punk is staying on the attack, but he's checking out his left arm. It's possible he injured it on the tope suicida. Punk can't win the title in the crowd, but he can punish Moxley, and he finds solace in the middle of the hometown fans. The referee is giving them plenty of leniency as well. Punk whips Moxley into the steps as dueling chants of CM Punk, "Let's go Moxley," begin again. Punk acknowledges the crowd with a smile, giving no real indication he's rattled by the hometown crowd partially turning against him, or if he's going to use that as fuel to punish Moxley more. The bigger talking point here is that he flexes his left arm, indicating that something is definitely wrong. Punk lifts Moxley onto his shoulders, but Moxley escapes and sends Punk headfirst into the ring post. Moxley immediately slides into the ring to gather himself. This is a rare sign of the usually aggressive Moxley needing an escape to regroup. Punk has overwhelmed him to start, and Moxley needs to refocus. Moxley is able to recover, and then he notices Punk has been busted open. Moxley immediately attacks the forehead of Punk with punches and digging in with his elbow. He seemingly hasn't noticed that Punk has been checking out his left elbow, or is making a mistake by not going after that target. The champion continues to target the bloody head of Punk by ramming him face first into the steps and then kicking him in the head. Though Punk is a bloody mess, Moxley is giving him time to recover as he's licking Punk's blood and playing to the crowd. Likely feeling confident given how the first match went and the current state Punk is in, Moxley is playing with his food rather than devouring it. Much like the first bout, Moxley allows Punk a couple of free swings. Punk doesn't have the energy and fire like he did early in the first match, and Moxley absorbs the strikes before firing back with a kick. He remains focused on the forehead of Punk, driving in elbows and digging his head into Punk's wound. Moxley again gives Punk some free shots, then cuts him off with a leg kick. Moxley's technique isn't as crisp, as he doesn't get his hips fully into it, but it's effective as it does stop Punk in his tracks. Moxley is baiting Punk into wearing himself out with strikes, and then pulling the rug from under him. The champ follows up with a series of chops in the corner. Punk reverses the corner whip and comes in with the running knee. He goes for his trademark bulldog, running his instinctual offense, but Moxley halts him and lifts him for a knee breaker, followed by a driving elbow into the knee. Moxley is going after the left knee of Punk to slow him down and take away the strength for the GTS. It's still unclear if Moxley recognizes the arm injury, but even if he doesn't, he's now wearing on a different limb to make life more difficult for CM Punk. For the first time in the bout, the champion is going after the left foot of the challenger. It's surprising that Moxley waited this long to attack the surgically repaired foot, but he was overwhelmed early by Punk and then saw red, literally, once Punk was busted open. Now that the foot has been presented to him, he's testing just how healthy it is. Punk tries to kick Moxley off, but Moxley takes his wind by landing a double stomp to the midsection. Moxley locks on a single leg crab to further damage the knee, and then transitions into an STF while digging into the bloody forehead of the challenger. The transition into the STF takes away some leverage from Punk as he tries to get to the ropes, and now he has to carry the weight of Moxley. For Moxley, though, it takes away his control as he can't stand and pull Punk back into a favorable position. What the STF does do is put more pressure on the foot of Punk, and once Moxley realizes this, he capitalizes by transitioning into a knee lock where he has both hands on Punk's foot, allowing him to manipulate it how he sees fit. It's one transition too many, though, as Punk now has his hands free to claw the eye at Moxley, forcing him to break the hold. Moxley is right back on the attack, though, grabbing the foot of Punk and hitting a drop kick to the leg in the corner, followed by a dragon screw. Moxley locks on a figure 4, and Punk again grabs at his left arm as he tries to survive the hold. Moxley still hasn't targeted the arm, and is seemingly blinded by his desire to go after the foot rather than notice the new potential injury. Moxley makes a big mistake here as he releases the hold unprompted after Punk spits on him. The sign of disrespect causes him to lose focus, and now he seems to be chasing punishment over victory. Moxley hits one piledriver for a 2 count as he doesn't make a great cover, and then goes for another piledriver on the apron. Punk reverses by grabbing his arm and pulling him down. The move buys Punk some time as he continues to check on his own left arm. It's clearly bothering Punk, but he's doing a good job of hiding the hindrance from Moxley. Punk tosses Moxley's shoulder first into the post, and now he has a target, going after Moxley's left shoulder. This will make it difficult for Moxley to get proper grip and strength for the Death Rider, and allows Punk to work a variety of submission holds. There's a real sense of urgency to Punk's game now, as he kicks at the shoulder of Moxley and then lands a series of stomps to the head. However, he has trouble maintaining his grip on Moxley's wrist due to his own arm injury and keeping his balance on his left foot. Punk locks on the Anaconda Vice on the left shoulder of Moxley, hoping the injury pays almost immediate dividends by trying to force a submission. Punk leans back a little too far though on the hold, almost too desperate to force the tap, and Moxley counters by biting his way out. Moxley lands a series of stomps but misses a lariat and gets hit with a leg lariat by Punk. In the first bout, it was the lariat by Moxley that was the beginning of the end for the hobbled Punk. In avoiding this one, Punk is able to fight on. Punk gets a scoop slam and goes to the top rope for a flying elbow, but takes too long in his weakened state, and Moxley catches him on the way down with a rear naked choke. The flying elbow has been hit and miss for Punk in his big matches, and given how battered he is, this was an unnecessary risk that he paid for. Moxley is forced to switch his grip from the right arm under the chin to the left arm under the chin, and in doing so, Punk gets enough of a reprieve to get to his feet. Punk forward rolls over Moxley and goes for an armbar attempt, but Moxley locks his hands to prevent it. Punk is able to punch Moxley until he breaks his grip, but he doesn't have control of Moxley's body with his legs as he leans back, allowing the champion to step over and into a bulldog choke. Moxley again switches his grip to put his left arm under the chin and allow for more control with his right arm. In doing so, he loses the bulldog choke and has to go for a headlock. Punk kicks his way out using his left foot, which is a huge mistake as Moxley catches it and turns it into an ankle lock. Due to his weakened state, Punk only has so many options, and the mental fatigue has caught up to him in the last 5 minutes as he's making things worse on himself. Punk makes it to the ropes while standing, and Moxley uses every second of the 5 count before releasing the hold and then hitting a German suplex. Moxley takes too long as he flips off the crowd, and Punk finds a burst of energy, leaping to his feet and hitting a head kick. Punk uses the right foot, putting the weight on the left foot again. There's no immediate reaction to re-injuring his left foot, which says it's held up. He switched his technique slightly as he was up on his toes more with this kick. It's a minor change, and he's still having issues with his leg and foot, but he's not in immediate pain. The kick stumbles Moxley, but he finds his wits enough to respond with a lariat that leaves both men down. Unlike the first match, Moxley can't immediately capitalize off the lariat, and though the desperation kick was not enough to gain Punk any sustained momentum, it did force Moxley to fire back with a desperation shot of his own, and bought Punk some time. Punk uses a shoulder fake to set up the GTS, but Moxley is able to escape. Moxley counters with a Death Rider, but Punk is able to escape that. They trade punches, and Moxley baits Punk into throwing his best shots, knowing he can take them without worry. Much like he did earlier in the match, Moxley cuts him off with a leg kick as Punk is too worried about his own offense. Punk goes under a lariat to hit a neckbreaker and then goes for the GTS, but Moxley catches his left knee on the way down. Moxley kicks at the leg and hits a Death Rider, but doesn't hook the leg and Punk kicks out. It took 2 Death Riders to put Punk away in the first match, and though he's more beat up in this bout, Punk is showing that he has some fight left by kicking out of the first one. Moxley's cocky cover didn't help his case, as he thought 1 Death Rider, combined with the overall damage, would be enough. Moxley hammers Punk with elbows after he can't fully secure a bulldog choke, and then goes back to the bulldog choke, but continues to have trouble with the grip due to his left arm being worked over throughout the latter portion of the bout. Punk tries a GTS, but doesn't have the strength to lift and complete the move out of the bulldog choke. Moxley tries to turn things into a rear naked choke, but Punk is able to roll through. On the way up, Moxley comes in too fast and has to catch himself, and the pause allows Punk to lift him up again and hit the GTS. Punk falls to his knees and Moxley collapses on him after hitting the ropes from the impact of the GTS. Punk musters up the strength and energy to lift Moxley once more and connect with another go to sleep. Punk wisely hooks the leg, gets a 3 count, and regains the AEW World Championship. Punk stays on his knees as he's handed the AEW World title, soaking in the moment from the Chicago crowd. Referee helps him up, and he has trouble putting weight on his left knee now that the adrenaline is worn off. Despite the blood and bruises, CM Punk is back on top of the mountain. For the first time in his AEW career, Punk was the underdog coming into the match. He had no clear in-ring advantages, even under the best of circumstances, and had plenty working against him. Despite the injury, and Moxley making quick work of him less than 2 weeks ago, Punk was able to mentally and physically pull himself together to defeat a man who had nearly a clean record in AEW. This bout proved Punk had the heart of a champion because his execution was not perfect, and he worked hurt the moment the bell rang. He managed to mix up his attacks and timing enough to keep Moxley off balance, but if he didn't have the fortitude to gut through it, this would have been another short night for CM Punk. The stats from our friends at Pro Wrestling Musings show clear advantages for Moxley in submission time and big offense. Where Moxley went wrong was taunting the crowd too much, likely stemming from overconfidence given how the first match went and the overall state of Punk. The lack of focus and potential overconfidence mixed with Punk's ability to dig down deep was enough to crown a new champion. CM Punk was AEW World Champion again. What happened next? The devil couldn't have seen coming. Next time on the series, CM Punk is hurt, old, fucking tired, and works with fucking children.